Gabby.
I'm Sidra.
We are a bowl of soup.
So, our purpose pretty much is to give kids who may feel underrepresented in books, give them that representation, as well as giving kids who are unfamiliar with different cultures and different people, and give them that learning experience of something new. And real quick, bowl of soup pretty much is like, the more you add to it, the more diverse it is, the tastier it is. So that's where the name comes from.
So the problem we were facing was that we noticed there wasn't a lot of diversity in children's books. There were some, but not a ton. And kids are sponges. They just kind of soak everything up. So if kids are reading books where it's only like white little boys and girls, where the boys are superheroes and the girls are princesses, they're going to grow up probably thinking that's just how the world is and that's how life works, and that's like all that you can do, you know.
So basically our solution is to create books that have characters that are not typically represented for children, like physical and mental disabilities, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, and religion. And we want to do this in a way that it's not stereotyping these characters, and in a way that isn't westernizing them as well. So now is really important because children, most children grow up in communities that aren't very diverse, where they have the same race, or generally the same race, or social class, or religion, etc. And children start to develop an acknowledging stereotypes around 3 to 5, or 3 to 5 years old. And so targeting them at this age is really crucial so that they aren't already solidified in those certain beliefs.
So real quick, this is our prototype. It's simple right now, but pretty much I've written a story based off kind of my life because I am half Palestinian, so I have that sort of experience to tell a story in that way, and I've used my younger sisters as characters. And it kind of just talks about, you know, religion of Islam, and give a learning experience for kids who don't know that much about it. And so our market, pretty much realistically right now, we would say our market is the Bellingham, Whatcom County community, just because that's where we're at right now. Our customers, so we have our consumers are the kids, really, because they're the ones going to be taking in the information, and then the customers are going to be the parents. They're the ones buying the books, reading them to their kids, and you know, we're hoping they'll come back and buy these books because it teaches their kids, you know, something new, as well as it represents other kids that don't have that sort of representation in books.
So when we started this project, our initial idea was to write a series of books about a group of kids from different backgrounds, and each kid in that little community would interact in the other children's books about their specific lives and circumstances. We started our process with an online survey to see what kinds of backgrounds and cultures people would like to see represented, and then through that we got a better idea of what people would want to see. But we talked to parents face to face and started to realize that there is a limit to how much storytelling we can do if the experience doesn't directly relate to something that we have experienced ourselves. So we pivoted our idea a little bit to only write about things that happen in our lives, so we're not appropriating other people's experiences. So we created that first book. I took that to my work. I work in childcare in Portland. So I read that to preschoolers. It was really interesting because they asked some interesting questions, because there's some differences in language in that book and difference in traditions. So it was interesting answering those questions for those kids. But the biggest piece of feedback I received when talking to adults, whether it was more parents and teachers while I was there, was that there are books that are out there that are serving the same purpose in telling these stories. So our final pivot, which came a little close to this deadline, was to launch more as a platform for authors to tell their stories, which is our plan for expansion. So if we were to continue on, and we plan to, we would like to be more of a foundation for authors to use to tell their stories and put their stories out there. Because everybody has a different story, and the more that are out there, the more volume, the more children have the opportunity to relate to that story and feel represented. Some of the substitutes to these kinds of children's books are, as we said, the White Hero books. An example I have here is Peace Baby. I read this book at the library. That is the story of a white girl who goes through a day in her life and teaches her friends how to make peace. The morals were good. I was a little disturbed by the fact that the majority of the time she was resolving conflicts for her friends. Her friends were people of color, so it's like this white girl solving problems, people of color. And then there were books with no lessons or morals whatsoever, such as Whose Knees Are These? Literally just a book about knees. 10 pages of knees. And then the alternatives are like non-book format, telling a story about an experience orally or reading a memoir.
So we looked at 2 different publishing methods.
We're out of time.
We're out of time.
You're a minute and a half over.
Oh.
I didn't want to keep you up.
Thank you.
I just think this is an amazing idea, and I'm just you guys presented great, and it's really exciting.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Was it hard to find publishers who are really honed in on this segment? We couldn't. No one's really doing this.
Well, like,
The problem that we ran into, and again, like what our feedback pointed to was that, because people know that books like these are out there, there just isn't enough knowledge that they are. So there are publishing companies that do this, they're just not promoting themselves well, and I think that that's the bigger issue.
yeah, because we found it was hard, to find books with diversity in it, so that's where we become the platform for that.
I think to kind of answer that a little bit. I think a lot of what happens a lot of times, like people think that there's going to be a customer segment to like even bother, which is a huge problem. But that's the point. Great job. I'm really glad y'all did this. I would have liked to see a little bit more as far as like layout of the presentation. I think that could have been gotten cleaned up a little bit. I think this is awesome. I'm actually looking at a note. I write a lot of notes in my notes app. And something that reminded me of this that I wrote down a while ago. This is like I was not worthy enough to be read about myself, which I think is like huge, and I think it's something that should be emphasized as we move forward. That this isn't only to diversify the experiences of the white students or the people that have fill that major role, but it's also to give value to the students whose histories or whose stories are not typically told. So I think I just kind of want to mention that you'll just have to be careful and find that balance, as opposed to just doing it for just
Learning experience.
yeah.
Thank you.
But good job.
Thank you.
First of all, I love the purpose, and I'd like to see the prototypes if you don't mind passing it around.
Yeah.
I feel inspired by them.
I mean, I guess you guys have some pictures of the colors a little weird, but yeah, they're pictures of my little sister.
Overall, I thought it was really great. You guys all presented really nice. I could hear you clearly, and everything was dialed. The only thing I would change is the amount of words that you guys have on your slides. I was listening to you guys. I wasn't even paying attention while I was on the slide, but not a lot of people can do that. A lot of people are reading and half listening. If you really want to get your attention, like draw them to either to read or to listen, like not both.
So how did you deal with answering those tough questions that the kids come up with?
So it was interesting, and I kind of wish the guy was there when I was doing it, because I was kind of teaching these kids about a culture that I wasn't part of, but it was more so explaining just that people were different. So it wasn't specifically doing like, yeah, these people have the like.
They weren't asking specifically about what I wrote about. Like I mentioned, like my teta, she's my grandma, her praying, and so I think he was saying about what was happening in the book, but about what other cultures there are and like what different traditions they have just in general. So.
And there were a lot of those questions, and like some of the reactions from kids weren't questions. Like they would just hear a word that was different. Like what were the words for the grandmas?
Tata and Jidda was grandma and
They heard that, and half of them just started laughing. So I explained to them like that's a different word for the same thing. We call them grandma and grandpa. So that was like just an interesting lesson.
How do you publish these books to like reach a larger audience more than what books kind of now already reach?
Well.
I did a little bit of research on different ways to publish books. So you can like independently publish your book, or you can go through a traditional publisher. So like these are some logos. There's Puff and Penguin and Scholastic. They really like their animals in kids' books publishing companies. And I kind of looked more at the pros and cons because we didn't really think about being like a publisher until towards the end. So yeah, I kind of have pros and cons for traditional publishing, like how it's easier to have someone else do it for you. It's cheaper, but you don't get as much royalties. And then if you go to the next slide, an indie author, you do all the work yourself, so it's a lot more expensive, it's harder. And then there are like a couple, you can get books through Shutterfly, Amazon will publish.
Yeah, they publish your book and